by the way, I just want to say it again, thank you to all of those who put in hello in the chat. I'm not going to be able to look at it at the moment because I want to focus down on the training I'm going to give you. If you have questions about what I'm talking about, today is a very deep training. Everybody should pay attention to it, but it's going to be a little bit more advanced training. So if you have questions, put them in there and I'll try to come back after the training and answer them, or my team will track on them as well. Okay, let me share my screen and we're going to get off to the races here. So today we're going to be talking about the requirements gap analysis, in particular, how using a requirements gap analysis can increase the likelihood of you winning, increase the amount you're winning, right? Less is more. And as we get started, I really want you to understand, from my perspective, sales is about removing the dirt to find the gold. I describe government contracting as a gold mine. There's gold in government contracting. That's why I think everybody who can be a competent business person should be in the federal space, because there's a huge market here. So that's gold, right? But you have to remove the dirt. You have to remove the opportunities that are not fit for you. I talked about this in a previous training where I described slam dunk opportunities, and you really want to understand slam dunk opportunities. A slam dunk opportunity is one that you basically guide right to the win. That ball is in your hand all the way in. There's opportunities that are just outside of a slam dunk where you're shooting it and it's going in. What we want to do is avoid you doing these Hail Mary things from the opponent's net, like throwing it all the way to yours. That's not the right opportunities to have in the pipeline. But if you get rid of those, that's the dirt. You'll begin to find the gold, which are the opportunities that are slam dunk or near slam dunk opportunities. Capture in federal government, I describe federal sales as business development, capture, and proposal. Business development, among other things, is about identifying opportunities. Capture is about shaping those opportunities. But you first need to understand it. And by the way, proposal is about writing and responding to opportunities. But in capture, you first need to understand the opportunity in order for you and anybody else in your company who's going to be part of that opportunity as it goes through your pipeline. You need to understand the opportunity. You need to fully understand it. It's not enough to go, hey, I got the documentation, but have you read it? So the requirements gap analysis that I talk about today is going to help you fully understand an opportunity. In today's training, I'm going to talk to you about what a requirement gap analysis is, just briefly going over it so we're all on the same page, why a requirement gap analysis is needed. And I would submit that every one of us who are here for today's training will probably run into a reason that we hadn't thought about before. And some of us, all of the reasons will be new, right? And the last thing I'm going to do is actually go into a requirements gap analysis that I'm writing right now with a customer who's going after this particular opportunity. I don't mind showing it to you. I'll beat you in the response, right? But I don't mind showing you what I do. It's one of the things I hated as a small business owner is when people kept keeping how they did stuff to themselves. I'm like, come on, that's not nice. It's like, teach me how to do it, and then let's go play man-on-man or one-on-one on the court. And you might still beat me, but at least now I know how to play the game. That's what I want to show you in bullet number 3 is how to actually look at an RGA so that it can strengthen your chances of winning. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. Process goes A to Z. And when we follow that process, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. That's what I want for you and for your pipeline, repeatable, predictable results, right? I've worked on, and today I'm going to be talking a lot about capture activities, right? I just wanted to point out, I'm not just talking about it, right? I do this. I'm literally doing it right now on multiple opportunities that are ranging between like 10 and 70 million. But I've worked on opportunities throughout my career, even in the past 5 years as I teach people, that range from the millions to the billions. I've worked on opportunities that are not task orders. Not contract vehicles, but task orders that are at that $1 billion level, right? So there's a lot of opportunities out there. One thing that I've learned is the process is the same, right? You just moving back and forth. You have more moving parts maybe, but the process for winning a $1 billion opportunity and a $1 million opportunity are basically the same, just a whole lot more in the billion. Okay, so make sure you put your company name into the chat. Let us know who you are. This is a community. I do this training partly to teach and show you how to do federal sales, federal government contracting, but I also do it as a way to bring you together and to start enabling you to be able to meet other people in the government contracting space, including federal buyers, people like me and PTAC type folks who are consultants, let's say, and then those of you who are small business folks in here. All right, let's dive into what is a requirement gap analysis or an RGA. I'm going to show it to you in a second, so I don't have to go overboard on this, but it's just a spreadsheet-based tool, right? So you're looking at a Word document, generally that's a PWS that comes from the government or a PDF, and you're translating it into a spreadsheet-based tool. It lays out everything that's in that performance work statement or statement of work about the requirement the government has in bullet form so that it's really easy for us to review. It details those requirements, or it breaks those requirements that sometimes are in these large paragraphs down into details. The reason I like this in particular is because it forces me to really analyze almost every paragraph of a scope or task area. And so I break it out into this separate implied tasks as well as the explicit tasks, right? And explicit tasks are thou shalt do this, right? Implied tasks are where they allude to it and they didn't really say it. Well, they want it. They just didn't put a shall before it. Well, those are your requirements. And so the RGA just labels or puts them all in a way that's easy to see. The other thing it does, and I'll show you this in a second, but it gives you a place to be able to lay out the skills and certs, et cetera. I had a customer I was working with a couple of weeks ago that had to abandon an opportunity at the last moment that did not have an RGA attached to it. And the reason was because there was a particular cert in there that was just a complete deal breaker. It was wired, but it was slid deep down into a particular set of description in the scope or in the RFP. It wasn't actually in the task areas, but when we found it, it was there. Well, if you do a requirement gap analysis, you can find these skills or certifications that people or companies must have and label them in the RGA so that everybody can see and score whether we're strong or weak on it. And I'll show you what I'm talking about there. And the last thing is what an RGA is it's a great common tool to share with potential teammates so that everybody sees the requirements the same way. There was this great line that says the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it took place at all. The biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it took place at all. I thought you said this. No, I meant this, right? You ever experienced that? And so when you lay something out like requirements in an RGA, it eliminates that. It helps everybody see the same things. We're like, let's go to row 52. Okay, we're all there. Let's talk really quickly about why RGAs are really important. I think they're a vital part of capture. If you're not doing an RGA, if you worked for me and didn't do an RGA, I would just send it right back to you or no bid it. But if it doesn't have an RGA, for me, I feel like we don't know that opportunity. Oh, I know it. No, you don't. You haven't broken it down. And if you can't even take the time to break it down in the beginning in an RGA, then what makes us think we're going to do that when the proposal and the pressure gets more on us for delivery, or even in the execution, what makes us think we won't miss something, right? So you catch things early on. We call this shifting left whenever you go earlier in the process, and doing an RGA in capture right when an opportunity is coming into your pipeline is really important. So it helps. One of the things that it helps do that I really love is when an RGA is done and we say we're going to bid or no bid this, business developers who sometimes, depending on the size of your company, are the ones who are outside the capture activity and they're just trying to identify opportunities. It's a great way to teach them, why did we decide to bid this one? Why did we decide not to bid this one? Oh, this one had this NAICS code. It's not a fit for us. This one had this certification, or this one had this thing and it's great for us. It teaches the team, including the people who were probably scoring it, it's reinforcing why we go after some opportunities and why we don't go after others. The other thing it does is capture managers. They have multiple things they can benefit from having a filled out RGA. So the first thing is when an RGA is filled out, a capture person looks in the pipeline, they fill out an RGA for an opportunity, they can quickly see that it's winnable or not. And what I mean by that, it's a slam dunk, or you're a few feet back from the net and you know you can drop it in. But they can see that it's not beyond half court. It's like, what am I shooting there for, right? So they can find opportunities, or they can identify opportunities in the pipeline as winnable or not winnable very fast. They can identify weak areas. Just because we have weak areas does not mean we're not going to bid on it, but it tells us this is what we need teaming partners for, right? So we can quickly identify weak areas at the very earliest stage of capture. I don't want to think about weak areas later on. That's the first thing I want to think about, because that's a reason to abandon it or to find a teammate, right? So I want to know that early on. Capture managers, they can communicate clearly these needs or weaknesses, right? But these needs to teammates. And I talk about it in a different training where I talk about reaching out and trying to find teammates and using a teaming partner worksheet. The idea is when you have a requirement gap analysis, you can communicate with the teammates saying, well, first off, this is what I'm looking for. Jane, does that sound like it's your company? Yeah. Okay, great. Let me send you this blank RGA. And what I mean by blank is it'll have all the details, but none of my company's scoring. I want them to score it, but I want them to score on the exact same sheet I'm using as the prime. By the way, sorry, quick sidebar. If you're subcontracting and they don't have one, fill it out yourself so you understand the opportunity and you can look at the prime and go, are they even primed to win? No pun intended. All right, leadership. This is a big deal. Leadership sometimes pops in at the wrong points and they pop in at red team thinking that's bid, no bid. It's like, it's not bid, no bid at the earliest stage. That's a late stage type of thing. And so early on, you want to make sure leadership understands the capture team, sales team's rationale for pursuing an opportunity, right? We're able to look at it and we show the scores and we say, hey, this is why we're going after it. And it brings that leader along. It gets them actively engaged in the sales process instead of being this person at the end who just says yes or no. It's like, well, what was that? Leadership is getting involved early. So going with the idea of bid, no bid that I've been talking about, you should be able to automate at some point your process for bid, no bid. And the idea is you're automating automating based on the RGA. So I give an RGA an overall score, but you can also automate. I describe something called a winning proposal score instead of a P-win. A winning proposal score is this idea of actually knowing the points that add up to 100. What do I have to do to get to 100? Well, the RGA is part of that winning proposal score. And so when you have these tools in place and processes in place, it allows you to be able to begin to automate a lot of the bid, no bid. You spend way less time discussing it. You just look and go, the tool is telling us we should go after it. All right, so let me switch over. I'm sharing my screen, so I'm going to bounce around with a bunch of screens. First stop I'm going to make is just quickly show you. This is what I'm going to come back to. This is the RGA that gets filled in. I'll walk you through it. But before I do, I want to set the scenario up. This is the opportunity I'm going after. This is a real opportunity. It's due in a couple of weeks. So, if you haven't started, don't bother starting yet. And by the way, if you want to be part of this and you're interested in a team, let me know. I'd be happy to talk to people. But I want to come down and just show you. This is a really easy PWS or SAL because it's only 8 pages. Sometimes they're 25 or 50 or 100 pages. It doesn't matter. The process is the same. It just might take you a few more hours to complete an RGA, which doesn't matter because if it's more pages, it's more millions, theoretically. All right, so the background in this exercise with the RGA, I don't care. I definitely care about whatever I say. I don't care, but it's not important right now. Here's the scope, objectives. These are cool. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm trying to come down. The RGA really is trying to get me down to this section. So specific tasks, they call them requirements/tasks. Everybody might call it a little differently, but basically you're just trying to find the task areas, right? And in here, I start capturing it. There's a couple of things I capture right away when I start doing my review. First off, I'm like, okay, there's the first task area, and you'll see me document it. But the very first thing, which is highly unusual to me, is I saw this big bold thing underneath task 1. Excuse me. And instantly it tells me that there's a requirement for TSSCI. In fact, you'll notice that as I finished reading this, there's at least 3 LCATs, labor categories, that require a TS clearance, TSSCI difference. Excuse me. So I'm coming down and I'm looking at this stuff, and let me come out because you don't need to read the words. What I want to show you is how I look at this the first time, and hopefully you can see at least the high level things. Right here is task area 1, right? So I'm going to put that into my area. The next thing that really matters to me is this bullet. These bullets are, to me, at the moment, subtasks. I actually will break down some bullets that are too big into separate rows, and I will definitely look at this whole paragraph and go, are there things in there that are implied that aren't called out in these bullets? And I'll just treat them like my own bullets. I'll add more bullets to task area 1 than the government uses if it's necessary for me to be able to understand or communicate the requirements to everybody else. So then the last thing I do is I copy this whole task area. So let me show you how I do it in this area. I'm going to come back and explain the whole sheet in 1 second. I want to stick with that one thing I was just talking about. So let me zoom in for a second. So right here, you see task area 1 is on row 3. And as you come across, I put down initiative management support. And I don't want to go through the whole explanation part, but here are the bullets. So these, what are those, 8 bullets or so? 9 bullets. They're the sub bullets that are in here for this requirement. What I'm doing here on this task 1 is I'm not scoring myself on initiative management support. I'm scoring myself on each one of these areas where I say, provide meeting logistics and support. I want to know over here, let me kind of get past my comments. I'll explain those in a minute. Over here where you see column D, it's got a rating. So if I'm looking at provide meeting logistics, I might sit there and say, well, we're a 4, right? And that's a horrible color. Sorry for that. But we're a 4, right? The idea is you're trying to find anything that you're 3 and higher. You have certain rules and thresholds. For me, I say if we're not 4 and higher, I don't want to prime it. It's not that I won't go after it. I just don't think we can prime it if we can't score 4 and higher overall. And I'll come back to that another time. But this column E is about putting in applicable contracts. And what this really means is I want to know that I can cover down on multiple. I've done this providing logistics support on 3 past performances. If you're newer to business government contracting, you're not going to have this kind of stuff I'm talking about. And so you'll have to evolve to this. But certainly I'm speaking to the people who are doing, let's say 2-3 million and above. You should have enough past performances, task orders that you can put down, 2, 5, and 10, let's say. Well, what does that mean? Over here on this other tab, and I don't have it populated, I apologize for that with examples. But over here, I would list out my past performance. All of the past performance I have in the last 3 years. I won't waste my time with anything farther back, but commercial, state, local, and federal is all fine. Federal at the top. But what I want to do is just be able to call out the contract name, client, the value, and the period of performance. And then over here is this description. And this is one of those things I tell people, you should be able to write a paragraph of, I don't know, let's say 500 characters, not words, but characters that describe this project, not in the government's terms, but in your terms. What did we do here? And so when you have that and you're coming back here to this, this gap analysis here and you're trying to score it, you're able to say, hey, this row 9, provide meeting logistics support. We've done this work in this contract, and this contract. That strengthens the score that I'm doing. This is a depth of understanding the requirement that a lot of us don't do. But if you did do, 2 things would happen. You'd increase your likelihood of winning and you'd remove opportunities that you start realizing you shouldn't be pursuing. They're just not worth it, right? And so I took this whole area and put it in here. Now, some tips that I do, as you can see here, I got a comment. What I do is I go to the SAL that we were just looking at, that Word document, and I copy it out. And I just put it in as a comment right here in the Excel cell so that I can come back and reference this. If I send this along to anybody, I don't want them to have found the SAL to be able to understand what the requirement is. This is not a, this is an exact cut and paste of that document. Of course, I'm going to send them the SAL, but what if they don't have it and they only have the spreadsheet? I want everything that they need to be able to execute on this document, to be able to populate it properly. I want it to be in here. And so as I go along, I'll do other things. I said that these were the main bullets. Some bullets were longer. So let me show you this guy. So this bullet here describes, I wrote refine, maintain, and update initiative plan management plans. Their bullet was much longer. It explains which defines the scope of the initiative, milestones, required resources, metrics, engagement strategies. I'm like, whatever. I don't need long bullets. I just need to know, hey, Bob, score us on refining, maintaining, updating IMPs, right? Well, what's an IMP? There it is. Got it. And so I put that information in. It's just a tip so that the people who are reviewing this, say solution architects who take a few minutes to look and go, are we good at this? Can we do this work? If they're helping you, they don't have to go back and forth and digest a 25-page or 50-page document. You've got it right here. Bob, all you have to do is look at this comment in order to know what an IMP is. Nothing else is really going to help you. But if you need something else, here is the entire task 1 written down, including the bullets that are down here, right? Refine the IMP. I guess that's what it is, right? Refine the IMP. It's right there as well. So I put it in a couple of places. It's just a tip for making things easier so people don't have to jump. Over here, just as a sidebar, the task area, column A, you're trying to match what's in the SAL or the PWS, and so you're putting it in, labeling the task area. And the reference, It depends on whether they got unique references or not. This is a field you decide whether you use it, and you're trying to tie it back and forth. This could be a requirements, a compliance matrix that proposal managers use, but that's not why I use it, and that's not its purpose. So don't confuse it for that. This is at the very earliest stages of me pursuing an opportunity to even decide whether I want to cover down. When I eventually move forward in the sales lifecycle, and I'm going to work with a proposal manager because my company has approved this opportunity to move forward in the sales cycle. When I work with them, this is one of the documents I'm going to give them and say, hey, we've been tracking on it this way. We've been working with our teammates this way. This is what we've got initially. And they're going to love me for it. They're going to be perfect. Let me turn it into my documents, but at least they have the data. They know that we're looking at this, and they know that we're thinking about our weak areas, what we can do to shore those up, et cetera. So let me zoom back out for a second because I want to show you more of the page. Over on the right-hand side here, there's a different area, and that's where we call it skills requirements, right? And you can label this in any way you want as you start going forward. Don't think of this this right side is so tight. The left side is very tight. You want it to be task areas like I have with gray, and then the yellows are sub-task areas. Whether the government labels them as sub doesn't matter. You want them in there. If they actually label them as subs, you're even better off. But on the right-hand side, I might look at this and say, oh, hey, in order to do IMPS, that last task area we were looking at, I need to have familiarity with this system, that system, this system. In fact, many times when you're working with the Navy or DHS or somebody, they say, I need you to be familiar with our particular enterprise level system called this. It's like, okay, well, it's a little bit of wiring and it's a little bit of the government protecting themselves saying, I need somebody who knows our inside systems. And so when you see those in the PWS, SAO, and any of the documentation, you list them out here. So you're covering down. Do we know that? If we don't, let's get a teaming partner who's got that information. Right here, government security, right? There's different things. They might say CMMC, level 3, whenever that starts working. But here, they've got SCI. We're like, okay. And then as I read it more, it says there's 3 labor categories. This is really important because as I'm talking to my company and I'm telling them, hey, I'm going after this opportunity, and I think it's going to be about 50 people, and 3 labor categories are going to need TSSCI. That's cool, Neil. How many of the 50 people will be in those 3 labor categories? Because that tells me how hard that recruiting effort is going to be. Finding somebody with a TSSCI is very hard compared to finding somebody with a TS clearance or with no clearance, right? As you go down in that level, it becomes easier. And so we need to know that early on because we don't want to get to the end. And what if the actual RFP comes out and it says, hey, here's the key personnel. You must have them already and give us the resumes. Well, your company wanted to start that early. That's the whole point of capture. Sorry, I'm going off on a capture tangent. Okay, so let me bring you back to the RGA. So those are the 2 sections you want, right? If there's anything else, you can see it here, software. If there's particular software you must be familiar with, for example, AWS, hey, you need to be able to use this product or that product in AWS, or Nintex, which is my current favorite one to just say, and other skills in here. The reason this is also really cool is I gave you a story where one of my customers had to abandon an opportunity because they didn't have an RGA and didn't see something early on. If you had seen it here, you could go back to the government. And what I would have done is said, that certification you said that was required, only 142 people have it in LinkedIn. So if you go into LinkedIn, try to find people with that cert, 142 people. But if you go into LinkedIn and find a comparable certification that's equal to that, and use more throughout the industry as well, 900,000 people are in LinkedIn. And the reason this is really important to you customers is because that means these people are charging a premium. First off, you're paying more, but you're not getting more. It's just a certification. The second thing is the chances of them jumping ship and having a delay to get them replaced is higher. The risk is higher than it is with these 900,000 people. We recommend you consider this. And here's a crosswalk between the 2 certs and what they mean about a person, things like that, right? But if I didn't know that, if I didn't do a requirements gap analysis and fill that out, how would I have been able to know that as a capture task, I need to go back and convince the KO, the contracting officer, that this is not a certification worth keeping in? So anyways, just really quick, coming back down, as I go through that SAL and I'm filling out a requirements gap analysis, I'm just coming down. I'm putting each task area in. You can see it as I'm scrolling the task areas. I break the bullets up. Sometimes I have a task area that just has a paragraph. And so I have to break it up into my own understanding of what that means, what those task areas are. Because when I hand it to somebody else in my company, they're not going to read this out. 20% of the people are going to read in depth, but 100% of the people, according to my facts that are made up 99% of the time, joke, they'll read bullets. They're just not going to read paragraphs and paragraphs, pages, right? But they will read bullets. And so if I break it down like this, they're going to see it. And this opportunity, I broke it down and I see this Microsoft 365. I'm like, okay, task area 3, I want to help my customer go get a teaming partner who's got Microsoft 365 cred, right? And to be able to come in. And so the same thing as I'm coming down, I didn't finish down here, but I put the main task areas in. And as I come back to fill it out, I will add it in. And then scoring, like I did there, I will, like, let's go to that SharePoint one. Let's just say we're a 2 and a 1. Well, I guess that's a 2 again, right? And a 1 here. And let's just say we're 1 on these 3. So now you can see I'm a 1.4. It immediately tells me I'm at risk. I need to find a teaming partner who's going to cover down on that, or hire an employee who's going to cover down. But it's better to hire a teaming partner and just shore it up. There's nothing wrong with teaming. It makes us so much stronger. And so as you go forward, you move forward. The last thing I want to show you, and I don't have time to go through, but if I had a score on all those task areas, they would have rolled up right to this D area. So it would have given me a cumulative score. And that's the score I'm looking for. And I apologize, I don't have it populated, but it's row 2D. And in 2D, it would tell me, am I an overall 3 or 4? And if I'm 4 and above, I'm priming. If I'm below 4, I'm considering not priming. That's the idea of an RGA in there. So I know it's a fire hose activity there. It's what I would take 8 hours to teach somebody, or months to work with a company to really help them implement it. But here's what I want you to remember as you think about requirement gap analysis, right? Winning contracts, it's the result of following a process. And using an RGA is absolutely a process, and it's going to guarantee that your pipeline is stronger. It's going to help you remove the dirt and leave the gold. I want you to add RGAs starting tomorrow to the way you do capture, even if it's not on the most recent or upcoming opportunities. If you've got one that's 3 months out, do an RGA and see how much more you understand that. If you're interested in working with me and taking your company to the next level, you're doing about 2 million or more, I'd love to chat with you about it. We have a BD Accelerator workshop that happy to have you come in. You just direct message me on LinkedIn. By the way, if you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm certainly going to reach out to you, but make sure you're connected with each other. That's how we build teams, and teams make your chances of winning so much higher. Just remember, out there, government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.